Yeah, we're live.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
My
sir.
name is Tayo Stephen. With me is your name, Abidjani. Abidjani is our lecturer for financial reporting. First and foremost, I want to apologize for us starting late. We are 12 minutes behind schedule. But it's one of those things, technology is not as perfect as we prefer it to be. So I think the lecturer was having challenge with the link. But here we are. So let me start by acknowledging those who are in the house with me. Abodunrin, where are you joining us from? Samuel, where are you joining us from? So if you're in the house, please let me know your name and where you are joining us from in the chat box. I'm very, very excited to be here. As each day passes by, the exam is drawing closer every day. So here at Starry Good Academy, we're doing our best, everything we can to make sure that we give you all the exam tips and all the rest. Yes, Gabriel from Lagos, welcome. Who else is in the house? Don't be shy. Tell us where you're joining us from. So, as we all know, the exam is all about questions. So sometimes brilliant students fail the exam. And sometimes we have people come back after the exam and say, look, the students I was coaching and training and teaching during before the exam, they went to do the exam, they passed, and I failed. What happened? And some people will say, not be juju be that, or they say maybe it's your village that is doing you. Well, that may be true, that may not be true. But when I was doing this exam, I remember that time many years ago, I qualified in 1997. So, yeah, Mustafa from Abuja, you're welcome. How is Abuja? Sheun from Ikeja,
Ikeja.
you're welcome. All right, please give us your name and where you're joining us. Anyway, back to my story. I remember then the Big Four. By the Big Four, we mean the big audit firm. When they are recruiting, they recruit fresh graduates and graduates that are either first class and second class upper. So, but the challenge we have is that we all meet, well, the common ground was that we all meet in the lecture hall. And many of them will complain that I've been doing this exam 3 times. They have given me a set time to pass this level, otherwise they will sack me. Yet, you see, these are brilliant students, yet they are not passing. Not because ICAN doesn't want brilliant students to pass. The real issue is that, like our lecturer told us then, there are a lot of things that goes on, particularly when you're in the exam hall. So exam tips, how to maximize time, how to maximize your mark, the easy mark, time management, all of that. Sometimes some of us are not taught anywhere. So we felt like we should come together and do this for us so that as you go into the next diet, you will go in and pass. So we're not going to be teaching, but what we'll be talking about might be the first time you are hearing it, particularly if this is the first time of doing this exam. All right, Samuel from Ila Ara Orag
Orogun. Ila
Orog
Orogun.
Ila Orogun. Welcome. Then Oluwatosin from Akute. You're welcome. So on this note, I hand you over to Abdulganiu to start his presentation. So you can go ahead and please share your slide.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So while he's sharing his slide, I want to still employ you if you're in the house and you have not told us your name and where you are joining us from. Yeah, you have left the room. You need to join back again, Abdulganiu. All right. So while we're waiting for him, I think that's the issue with the internet again.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you, but you have disappeared. I don't know
Okay.
how that happened. I think your screen, you're not sharing your screen. I need to share your screen and
Okay.
also your
Let me
video
stop
needs to be
sharing.
on.
My video is still on.
Okay, that's good.
My video is
So,
still on.
so you can go on and share your screen. So
So
you
can you view my
can,
screen now, sir?
yes, I can see your screen. So you
Okay,
can go
sir.
on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to Study Gold ICAN exam webinar financial reporting. The objective of this webinar is to take students through various form of question type, okay, such as assess, discuss, advise, okay, calculate, compute, among others. Okay, because from experience, a lot of students fail not probably because they don't know what to write. You know, it's not just because they can't provide suggested solution to the requirements of the examiner, but they failed because they don't know what to be, provided. Okay, for instance, now, uh, you know, a simple exam question we ask you list and explain. Okay, list and explain. But in a professional setting, you may be asked a question, and you are just asked to discuss, So to discuss, it means that you need to tell us what you understand by the keywords, in the case study or the subject matter. Okay, and also you need to, tell the examiner if there are types of the subject matter. For instance, now, you are asked to discuss what an asset is. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm not sure you are scrolling through your slide. I just
No,
see
I've
the
not.
first.
I've not started scrolling.
I
So
think you should go right on because of our time.
okay,
Good.
okay. So
Yeah, because we have barely less than 45 minutes to wrap up.
okay,
Okay,
sir.
go
Okay,
ahead,
sir.
please.
So like I said earlier, so at the end of this webinar, you guys are expected to understand and appreciate effective time management, reviewing, understanding, and analyzing question requirements carefully, and then also structuring answers to earn more marks. Okay. From experience, a student was failed probably because he didn't differentiate between reporting numbers and figures. Okay, because what differentiates reporting numbers and figures is the currency is the currency. Okay, so I think yes, it happened to the guy on FR. Okay, so there is a particular question they responded to. I think it is a group account. Okay, so while presenting his suggested solution, he failed to report the currency denomination, whether it is naira, dollar, or the likes. So the guy was just putting down the figures, and he did well, but he was failed on technical terms because he failed to include in currency denomination he's reporting on. So understanding the question like analyze, apply, assess, list, outline, differentiate, summarize, distinguish, among others, is important for students to pass ICAN exam and any other professional exams, unlike your academic exam. Okay, so understanding the question, that is when answering an exam question, it is important to consider the question requirements carefully to understand exactly what is being asked. So we have some points which we are going to go through together, and we explain how to respond to such question in an exam setting. Okay, so for instance, now there is this exam type question which states that you have recently been appointed as the finance manager of your company, and the finance director has asked you to prepare a report showing the profitability and liquidity position of the company for management use. You are required, using the financial statement presented for the 2 recent years, analyze the profitability and liquidity position of your company. So this question type is what is to analyze. So this entails breaking the question into separate parts, ensure you discuss and interpret each part, and lastly relay the exam question to the scenario provided. For instance, now you have been asked to prepare a report showing the profitability and liquidity position. So apart from the finance director who has financial background, there are other directors that constitute the board of directors, such as the marketing director, admin and the likes. So you don't expect them to have financial inclusion. Okay, so it therefore requires interpreting what you mean by profitability ratios, liquidity ratio, and the like. So, under profitability, we have net profit margin, gross profit margin, and the likes. Then under liquidity position, we have your current ratio. Okay, you have your net asset ratio, your debt, your debt ratio and the likes. So for instance, now you need to explain or interpret what the ratio 2 to 1 of your current ratio mean. Okay, so are you saying that it is good for a company to have excess liquidity over liability, or what does it mean to have ratio 2 to 1? Yes, this means it means that having ratio 2 to 1 for your current ratio, the company can pay its outstanding liability or its debt as at when they fall due. Okay, as when they fall due. So you need to analyze by discussing what profitability and liquidity position of a company means to the management. Then you interpret the ratios you used, okay, and you relate this to the exam question. So that's on that. Then also we have apply. Okay, so in this question now you have been required to apply the provision of the IS2 inventory on the
All
above
right. Thank you. Thank you,
transactions.
Abdulgani. Before you go on, Abodun said they can't see your slide again. I can see. So it might be your internet. Kindly refresh. Abodun, kindly refresh your internet. So if you are just joining us, please let's acknowledge your presence. You can put your name in the chat box, and where you are joining us from, then I will acknowledge your presence. So if you have any question in any form regarding financial reporting, you can leave it in the chat box. If we have time, we'll go through them. We'll do our best. Okay, Abodon say I can see it now. All right, so you can continue. You need to a little bit speed up because of time. We're
Okay.
running out of time. All
Okay, sir.
right, back to you. You can continue, Abdulgani.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Now, this exam type question is focusing on applying the provision of IAS2, which is inventory, on this transaction. Now, a company has just, purchased an item of inventory that costs 2 million naira and has also incurred a transportation cost of 500,000 naira. And remember, the IAS2 inventory requires an entity to recognize, okay, the cost of the assets, which is inventory, okay, by identifying the purchase cost of the item, okay, then plus any other attributable cost associated with the cost of bringing the inventory to its present location and condition. And I think we have that in the second sentence. Okay, in order to bring the item to its present location and condition, the company is required to incur a transportation cost of 500,000 naira. So in applying the provision of IS2, you need to start from the definition of IS2, the recognition criteria, the measurement criteria, and the presentation criteria, as well as disclosure, because you need to disclose the cost, okay, how you recognize the basis of measurement, okay, and remember inventory has to be measured at the lower of cost and their net realizable value. Now also, IFRS 15 states 5 conditions to be satisfied before revenue could be recognized by a company. You are required to assess the impact of IFRS 15 on revenue recognition. Now, this type of question, entails determining the strengths, weaknesses, importance, or significance to the given question. Now, in this case, now, what our focus is on, what is to assess, that is by stating the importance or the significance, okay, the effects of IFRS 15 on revenue recognition. So remember, the first one is to identify the contract. Okay, then you separate or determine the performance obligation. Okay, so and also you determine the transaction price, then you allocate the transaction price to the performance obligation, where there are various performance obligation in the case of a contract or construction, of, let's say, bridges, or any other infrastructural amenities. Okay, and then lastly, you recognize revenue. So you need to what? You need to tell us the impact this standard has in recognizing revenue. So where projects are to be delivered in stages, okay, and the customer has paid you in advance. So should you recognize revenue or the whole money received from the customer as at the date of receipt of such money, or you spread, you have something like deferred income, which means you are spreading the income over the period of the contract, which is the best approach according to the requirement of IFRS 15. Then also we have, you know, an exam question that asks you to calculate the cost of the inventory to the company. So you can see I use the same exam type question for calculate and then and analyze, okay, for calculate and apply. Okay, so the difference between these two is that the latter is asking us to, to calculate, use mathematical process, to determine the value of the, cost of the inventory. Do you understand? Okay, so then also on comments, it entails including an explanation, illustration, or criticism in your answer. Okay, and also you may have an exam question that asks you to state the similarities, okay, and the similarities between the two accounting standards. Yes, this question is asking you to compare both the IS 16 and IS 38. Okay, so you need to tell us the distinguishable factors or attributes or characteristics between these two standards. So it entails explaining the similarities and differences. Yes, IS 16 is on assets, which is on property, plant, and equipment. Or also, you can mention that IS 16 is the standards that guides the recognition and measurement of what of a physical asset. Okay, why IS 38 is on what is on intangible assets, an asset that you cannot see, you cannot touch, and you cannot feel. Do you understand? Okay, so also IS 16 allows an entity for initial acquisition of an asset to recognize such assets at cost. Yes, IS 38 allows same. Okay, so but the difference there is that while IS 16 subsequently allows an entity, to either recognize assets at, using the cost basis or the revaluation basis. Okay, so IS 38 allows what? Allows the uh either the cost basis and the fair value basis. Okay, and the fair value basis. So the difference between these two is that IS 16 assets are usually depreciated over their useful life. Okay, so their useful life will always be determined because it is a tangible asset. Okay, why IS 38 has to, class for this. An intangible asset can only be impaired, okay, when the fair value, okay, is lower than the, carrying amount of the asset as at the date of, valuation. Okay, now an entity may choose not to amortize an intangible asset, specifically when the asset useful life cannot be determined. Okay, so you need to tell us the similarities as well as the similarities between the two accounting standards. Then conclusion entails ending your answer well in a case scenario type question. Then also, if you are asked to criticize, so this means that you have to, state against, okay, you have to go against or disagree with the subject matter, okay, or the points of the examiner. So this entails analyzing a situation to identify all the weaknesses, problems that exist. Please do not explain the situation. You are to criticize. Are we together? And if you're asked to describe, it entails giving a detailed account of qualities or features. So we have an exam type question which asks to describe the categories of assets that should be classified as intangible assets in line with the requirements of IS 38. So we are expected to mention goodwill and tell us what goodwill is. Okay, yes. If you have development, research and development expenditure, okay, that qualifies, uh, uh, that satisfy the five conditions for a development expenditure to be recognized as an intangible asset. So we also have other types of intangible assets, brands, materials, and the likes. Okay, so you have to mention each of these and describe them. Are we together? So telling us the qualities, the characteristics of each type, this type of intangible assets, why they should be recognized as an intangible asset, where they should be presented in the books of the of a company, among others. Are we together? Then, if you're asked to define, okay, it entails giving meaning to a question. Okay, so ensure you keep it short and relevant, so you don't, tell us too much story. So, if you're asked to define an asset in line with the requirements of IS 16, property, plant, and equipment, you know, before an asset, okay, will be qualified as an intangible asset or a property, plant, and equipment, it should uh it's either it must be used for a period of more than 12 months, and it must be used, to generate inflow, okay, economic benefits to the entity using it. The entity using it must be able to control such assets. Okay, must be able to control such assets. So it's not necessary that the person using the asset owns the asset legally. Okay, so legal ownership is not considered in the standard, but what is considered is the control over the asset. So, and also, if you have to define investment property in line with the requirement of IS 40, so you ensure that you provide your suggested solution in line or as it is defined, in the standard. Okay, so, and also, we have, okay, so if you're asked to discuss, okay, so this entails examining in detail using arguments about the pro and cons of an issue. So for instance, now IS 40 permitted two models for the measurement of investment property after initial recognition. These models differs from the models permitted by IS 16 in relation to the measurement of property, plant, and equipment. So what are the two models? Under IS 16, we have the cost model and the evaluation model. While under IS 40, we have the cost model and the fair value model. Okay, so you need to discuss first. You discuss the two standards. Okay, you discuss what IS 16 is and its focus, its as well as the objectives, and then also you discuss IS 40, its focus, as well as the objectives of the standard. Then you move to the models, okay, which is the cost model and the evaluation model for IS. You explain the two, then you move to the at IS 40. You explain both the cost model and the fair value model. Please know that for the cost model for both IS 16 and IS 40, they are the same, because an entity should recognize the assets at first at what at cost. Okay, at cost. Then we have evaluate. So this entails determining the scenario in the light of the arguments for and against. Ensure you mention evidence to support your evaluation. So XYZ Limited requires a motor vehicle worth 12 million naira on what? On 1st of April 2020, and then hire it to ABC Limited, who pays in installments. Required to evaluate if a contract exists from the scenario given. Okay, yes, there's a scenario, there's a contract. Okay, there's a contract, and ABC has entered into a contract with SYZ. Okay, so, and also, uh the who owns the asset now legally? SYZ owns what? Owns the asset. Okay, so until ABC until ABC pays the last installment, then ABC become the legal owner of the asset. But in accounting, ABC has gained the possession of the asset, and he has control over the asset, and also the asset has started, or is about to generate economic benefits that accrue to ABC and not SYZ. Though ABC may be paying, XYZ in installments over an agreed period of time. Okay, so and then also we have this exam type question which focus on explain. Okay, so your friend who has just been appointed as the store manager in a retail supermarket based in Lagos is in doubt as to whether inventory should be measured at the lower of their cost, okay, at the lower of cost and their net realizable value or not. So you have to explain the basis of measuring an inventory in line with the requirements of IAS2 inventory. So this exam type question entails making the answer clear, supporting it with enough details that are relevant, concise, and explanatory. Okay, so in line with the requirement of IAS2, inventory has to be measured at the lower of cost and their net realizable value. That's your intro. Okay, then you relate this with the case study with the scenario given by the examiner. Are we together? So also a typical exam question may ask you to list the disclosure requirements of IFRS 8. So once you know what IFRS 8 is all about, that's segment reporting. So what are the disclosure requirements for segment reporting? So this exam requirement entails outlining several ideas, aspects, events, themes, and qualities. Okay, so you are not explaining what IFRS 8 is, okay, but you are listing the disclosure requirements of IFRS 8. Are we together? Okay, so then also you are asked to outline the requirement of the IFA Code of Conduct as published by the International Ethical Standards Board for Accountants, ESBA. Okay, so what are the code of conduct required by IFAC or required by a professional accountant as published by IFAC? Yes, this type of question entails explaining the highlighted points, stated in the IFA Code of Conduct, like integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional behavior. Okay, so professional due care. Are we together? So you explain so you are just to outline, okay? So you are to outline integrity, okay, objectivity, but for to gain more mark, so in one sentence, okay, you can just say the IFA Code of Conduct requires a professional accountant, you know, to abide by the following principles, by the following ethical principles: one, integrity; two, objectivity; three, professional duty and competence; four, confidentiality; five, professional behavior. Are we together? So also, the finance director of ABC Limited has just briefed you on the outcome of the meeting held with the board of directors. He mentioned that the board is considering whether to acquire an intangible asset, that is software, from a software developing company, or to internally build a software that will be tailored to the company's operating model. However, they are not sure of the relevant accounting standards applicable to the proposed transactions to enable them make an informed decision. Required, kindly recommend. Kindly recommend. So it entails giving advice. It entails giving advice. So in recognizing or acquiring, so should they develop internally, or to outsource or acquire from an external company? So while recommending, you need to make reference to the provision of IAS 38, which is intangible assets. So you need to tell them if they decide to develop the assets internally, so you'll be making reference to an internally generated development expenditure. Okay, so internally generated intangible assets, and the focus is on development cost. The focus is on development cost. So you also need to list the five conditions. Okay, so the company must have an intention to use the asset. There must be an intended buyer. There must be a market for such an asset. The availability of technology tools to be used in completing such an asset, among others. Are we together? So you recommend based on with reference to the provision of the applicable standard. And also, we have this exam type question which states that which I've asked you to state the disclosure requirements in line with the provision of IAS 37, provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So this exam type question entails explaining by focusing on the exact point. Now, the question is, contingent liabilities should not be recognized in the financial statements, but only disclosed by way of notes unless the likelihood of the obligations occurring is considered remote, in which case no disclosure is made. So state the disclosure requirements in line with the provision of IS 37, provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So when should a contingent liability be recognized? Okay, so you need to state the conditions, and as well as what as well as the disclosure requirement in line with the applicable standard. And also, if you're asked to summarize, this entails giving a brief, condensed conclusion, avoid unnecessary details. This is usually common in case study questions. Are we together? So that's that on understanding the question. So let's move to effective time management.
Thank you. So before we move down there, yeah, I think you have about 5 minutes more to go. So Yusuf Dan Zaria, you are joining us from Gombe. How is Gombe this afternoon? So if you have just joined us and we have not acknowledged your presence, please indicate that by putting your name in the chat box and where you are joining us from. So we are moving to effective time management, which I think you have about 5 minutes more, and then I'll then go ahead with my own presentation as well. All right, go ahead, Abidjan.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we are on effective time management. Yes, you see, your approach to planning your time for the exam is crucial for completing the exam and ensuring the best use of the time available. Yeah, when I was writing an ICAN exam, I think then ICAN still allows students to go in with the, with their hand wash or wristwatch. Sorry, with a wristwatch. So, but now ICAN have stopped that. Yes, I'm sure. And now what I can use is the wall clock. Okay, so I can now use the wall clock. So now, if I were you,
And sorry
before,
for cutting you. The reason why they
okay,
stopped that is probably because you have smartwatches now that is more
yes,
like a phone, that is more like computer. So students
yes,
can hide answers in smartwatches
of
and
course,
then
sir,
so
of
they
course,
have
sir,
to stop that. So
yes, yes,
all right,
thank you,
just
sir,
chipping that in.
thank you very much, sir. So now, before you go into the exam, or an average student should start, in fact, you should have started practicing your exam type question from the first day you start your reading, from the first day you start going to class, from the first day you start listening to our video lectures. So you don't wait until the exam day or a day before the exam before practicing questions. So if I were you, I will set my time. Okay, so I won't use more than the 3 hour required of me in the exam hall. So I want to see how far I can go. So that's you are preparing yourself. So remember this management's word that whoever fails to plan has planned towards to fail. So timing is very important in everything we do in our life. Remember, your exam time is just 3 hours per paper. So the questions will be in 3 sections. Okay. So yes, in 2020 when the syllabus was changed, we have 2 sessions, of which the first section is the compulsory question that carries 40 marks, and the second section, which is section B, has just 4 marks, and you have to ask 5 questions, and you have to answer 3, each of which carries 20 marks. But now the 2021 syllabus has reviewed this, and now we have 3 sections. So do you now see the reason why you should always read your instruction carefully? Okay, so it is expected of students, okay, before, don't don't rush to the exam hall and start attempting question. Okay, so there might be an instruction in the instruction page stating that question 1 should not be attended to, okay, or do not answer question 1, but because of your ignorance, okay, you have rushed, and and this question probably might take half of your time. Okay, so because it do happen to students, and our advice to students over the years has been that you know attempt the questions you understand better first, then you go back to the tough ones later. Okay, but if you try to start with the tough ones, these might consume much of your time, so you don't have to spend much time on on section A, which usually is which usually takes like 30 marks. Okay, yes, I just mentioned that we have three sections now. So our section A now is 30 marks, compulsory question. It is not multiple choice question in your case. Okay. So do you now see the reason why you should read the instructions? So the instructions here is saying that this consists of 20 compulsory multiple choice questions of 1 mark each. Okay. So, but the information now is that it is no longer what multiple choice question. It is now what? It is now uh theory based, okay, or you may be asked to compute, calculate, and the likes. So then you have your section B, which consists of three sections, 20 marks each. You are expected to answer two questions out of the three questions, okay. Then if I were you, I won't use more than 20 minutes, okay, for each question. You should not use more than 20 minutes for each question. Then your section C usually consists of three questions. You have to answer two questions out of the three, each of which carries 15 marks. Okay, so for this section, I will allocate 30 minutes for the two questions, meaning 15 minutes per question. Then I will have about 45 minutes, to go through all the suggested solutions I've provided. So your question one should not maximum of 45 1 hour. Your question one. In fact, 1 hour is too much. So just time yourself to 45 minutes. So whatever you do within that 45 minutes, just you know uh, put it aside, go to another question, attempt it, then you have more. So my analysis to students have always been that for section C, which has 15 marks each, 30 marks in total, you have expected marks of 30. If at least you can score 20 out of the section C, if you can score 20 marks out of 30, then in section B, which has 20 marks, with a total marks of 40 expected, if you can score minimum of 25 out of the 40 marks, you have your 45 already. Then your section A, which has 30 marks, okay. So if you can score an average of 15 marks out of the 30, then you have 60 already. So if I may ask you, what is the pass mark? What is the ICAN pass mark? I think it's
15 mark.
50. So
Yeah.
it's 50 marks. So with this analysis, you see that you have passed already. So you won't even have issue with let my people go. And fortunately, if students are to be considered, you have more marks. So this this is what is expected of an average student in an exam hall. So your approach to planning your time for the exam is crucial for completing the exam and ensuring the best use of the time available. You should read the requirement of the question first before attempting the questions. And mind you, always attempt the questions that seems that are not tough, okay, that seems understandable and easy for you to attempt, then go back to the tough ones later. So scan through the question paper to seek the questions that you can easily answer and write down some of the points as they are coming to your mind. You can do that at the back of your answer sheet or on the last sheet. Don't waste too much time on a question. Make sure you allocate time to each question. When you see the allocated time for each question, skip that question and go to the next question. You can come back to that later. Leave enough space for the question you are not very familiar with or you did not remember at that moment. Remember, always start with the questions you can answer easily.
Thank you very much. So that's
Thank you,
where
sir.
you'll be stopping, and
Okay.
I'll be asking that if you are just joining us, you leave your name and your this thing, your name just at the right hand side here, and where you are joining us from, and then I'll be able to acknowledge your presence. Thank you very much. So let's have your reaction. If you have enjoyed what Abduganu have just presented, please let's have your emotion, your reaction there. Give him a thumb up. I am clapping for him here because he did a very good job. And what
Thank you,
about
sir.
you? So let's get your reaction there. So I'll be sharing my screen now to finalize the other parts that we are dealing with. So remember, he spoke to us about time management and about easy mark. So I will quickly tell us what we should do inside the exam hall. So here we have a live question. By live question here, I mean the last diet question This is May 2022 diet. The Institute of Chartered Accountant of Nigeria skill level exam, May 2022 financial reporting. So time allowed is 3 1/4 hours, which means 3 hours and 15 minutes. 15 minutes is for reading time. So what should you do with the reading time? So I'm going to discuss that quickly. Now, like Abdgani said earlier on, he said, read the instruction. I remember there's an interview that was conducted sometime somewhere in the world. And so a lot of people came for this interview, and then they gave them the question, and then they gave them the answer sheet. And then they said, time starts now, and people started writing. But the moment they said, time start now, somebody just stood up and went, wrote his name and submitted and walked away. Whereas other people were surprised looking at him, but they continue. After, I think, 3 hours, then they started collecting the question and all the rest, the answer sheet. You know that every other person failed that test, except the person that just wrote his name and submitted and went away. Why? Because the instructions say do nothing. Just write down your name and submit your answer sheet and walk out of the hall. So the person who read that instruction is the only one that passed that test. So although ICAN exam is very unlikely going to do the same, but the gist of the matter is read the instruction, right? So you are required to attempt 5 out of 7 in this question paper. So you will answer 5 out of 7. So the session A is compulsory, which means session A is compulsory, you must answer that. So it means therefore that the remaining 4 will be from session B and session C. So that is what should you now do with this 15-minute question reading mark. You shouldn't waste time reading this compulsory session A. Don't read it at all. Just go to your session B. Why? Because you want to use that 15 mark to determine the 4 questions you have to answer from session B and session C. So I'm now in session B. Session B is 40 marks, and it says open-ended question, instruction. You are required to attempt any 2 out of 3 questions in this session, which means there are question 3, 2, 3, and 4 in this session. You have to answer any 2. So if you answer 3 in this session, the examiner will pick the best one that you have in this session and strike it off because you have gone against the instruction. So you have to answer only 2. So even if you answer 3 here and you answer 1 in the other session, it will be taken that you have answered only 2. Remember, it's the best one that will be striked off. So just follow the instruction. So we're still going to use the 15 minutes. What should you do with the 15 minutes? Once you get into the session 2, make sure you read the requirement. Don't bother reading the body of the question. Just read the requirement. For instance, question 2A, it says here, required, explain the term accounting policy and accounting estimate. So this is a 3-mark question. So this place say explain. So if you already know accounting policy and estimate, then you should go ahead and answer that. Then the B part went ahead and give you some storyline again, like I said earlier on. See what I just said now in this question 2A. Even if you don't read this body of the question, you see, this question is not having any relationship to do with the body, particularly, although it's making reference to IAS 8 here, but you see, if you have already studied very well, you know that this is under IAS 8, and you just go ahead and answer it. So you go to the B part also, and you read the requirement. The requirement here say write a memo addressed to the finance director discussing changes. Remember, it's talking about here distinguishing changes rather in accounting policy and changing in accounting estimate, highlighting also the accounting treatment of changes in accounting estimate. So here, if after reading the requirement you are comfortable with this question, you just stick it with your pencil as one of the things that you want to answer. You go to the C part and you read the requirement. Look at the body of the question in the C part. See how lengthy it is, right? Then the requirement comes up. So if you read the requirement and you discover that you don't have an idea about this question, why waste time reading all these lengthy stories here? So that's how to save time. So if you realize that you are not going to answer question 2, you just leave it and you go to question 3. So question 3 here, the same principle applies here. You don't go reading the body of the question in the exam with your 15 minutes. You just go straight to the requirement. You can see how lengthy it is. 15 minutes might not even be enough to read all of this and get a proper grasp and understanding of it. So I just scroll down to the requirement. The requirement here said, prepare the consolidated statement of financial position as at 31st December 2020. So if you are very conversant with it, you just stick it and take it into consideration that you are going to attempt this very question. You do the same for question 4. Look at the lengthy. Question 4 has A and B and possibly C. Look at the lengthiness of the body of the question. So you have to skip all of this and go to the requirement. The requirement here says, requirement A says, prepare the statement of cash flow. Yeah, so if you are very conversant with preparation of cash flow, you know that this is what this is testing here. The B part say that you don't have to finish reading it. Once you know this is cash flow, using the indirect method, if you are not going to, you are not familiar with it, then there's no point reading it further. Just move on to section C and do the same here. So you must have picked the 2 you want to answer in section B there. Then once you go to section C, you quickly go to the requirement and repeat the same. But what is the instruction here? Open-ended question, it says 30 mark, and then it says instruction. You are required to attempt any 2 out of 3. Just like I said earlier on, even if you know the 3, just attempt only 2, not the 3. If you attempt the 3, the examiner will pick the best one that you have. You should score a good marking, and they'll just strike it off for you. And that means that you have wasted a lot of time answering what you shouldn't have answered. All right. So that is how you should handle your 15 mark question. I mean, your 15 minutes in the exam. So I scroll back again to the beginning of the question. Then, so if you have determined what you want to, the 4 questions you want to answer from B and C part, and section B and C, then we'll now go back. The examiner, the invigilator will tell you when to start. Like we said earlier on, you are not permitted to use wristwatch, right? But probably, if it hasn't changed, there should be wall clock in the exam hall. There should be wall clock. So the exam, like I said earlier, is 3 hours. What should you now do within 3 hours when you are asked to start? Note that you don't have to start with session 1 in the exam. What Abdul said earlier on is start with the easiest question that you can answer. So what does that simply mean? From your 15 minutes, you must have chosen the one that you know is the easiest. The easiest may not be number 1. The easiest might be number 3. You don't even have to start them session by session. You can just go to question number 6, which is in section C, and start if that is the one you find comfortable, right? So you just go to that and you start with that. You don't have to start them session by session and so on. So if you look at this, this one said discuss the quantitative characteristics which make information useful to users of financial statement. So this is a 10-mark question. This is what you call easy mark in the exam. So it says discuss the quantitative characteristics which make which makes information useful to the user. So quantitative characteristics here, qualitative rather, are talking of computational issues. So if you know what they are, you go straight in and start answering that. So the second one here says identify 4 main objectives of FRCON as defined in the Act establishing the Act. So this place here is talking of Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. So if you know what those 4 objectives are, 2 mark, that's an easy mark that you want to quickly pick. The C part goes ahead to say explain the financial capital maintenance and physical capital concept. Now I'll show us my script. So this script here is just telling us how you should start. So I'll go to the beginning. The beginning of this is the way I've itemized them. So as you look at this, assuming you are starting with solution 3, so you put at the beginning of your script 3A. Do not start 3A and 3B on the same sheet. No, always start a new answer on a plain sheet paper. So always label them, this is 3A. Now, like I said earlier on, if you look at the question, I'm assuming you are starting with 3A. Let me scroll back to 3 here. Now, this is question 3. Okay, question 3 here doesn't have A or B. But let me go to question 4 that has A, B, and C. This is question 4. So let me come back here. You don't have to start with question 3A. You can leave space and put 3A continue and come and start with 3B, right? So, but make sure you label it properly. So this is 3B, you can start with 3B. And like I said earlier on, you don't have to, you don't come and start 3C on this same page here, no. So you continue on the next page, which is 3B continue, but don't come here and start 3C. This is a no. The reason is that if you come here and start 3C, you don't know whether the space you have left is enough for you when you are doing your 3B. And students that have already started 3C at the beginning here, what will you do when you find out that you don't have space to continue your 3B? You come back and cancel the 3C, which means you have wasted a time answering them, and then you cancel them and start repeating that all over again. I made that mistake in the years when I was doing ICAN exam. I don't think I passed that diet there. So that is what you must avoid. So do not write or the same two answers on the same page. So this is 3B. 3B continue. You can come on the new sheet to start 3C here. And then you continue 3C here if you still need those space. And then you go to 3D if there's 3D. Then you start 3D continue. This is 5A. Like I said, you don't have to start in chronological order. If the next question you want to answer is 5, then you come here, you put there 5A. If you don't want to start with 5A, you leave enough space. This 5A continue next page, you come and start your 5B. If 5B is what you want to start, then you continue 5B continue, 5C, 5C continue, 5D, 5D continue, and so on. Now, remember that you are paid for the exam. So when you are asking for extra sheet, it doesn't mean that you have filled up all your sheets. No, it simply means you have done proper numbering. And the one you are writing now, you need extra sheet. All right, we'll now go to time management. You are given 3 hours. What should you do with that 3 hours? So this is how you calculate what to do and how much time you must spend per mark in the exam. So 3 hours here means how many minutes do we have in 3 hours? I mean, how many minutes do we have in an hour? We have 60 minutes. So 3 hours multiplied by 60 minutes will give us 180 minutes. So you have 180 minutes to finish the exam. So if you divide 180 minutes by 100 mark, then what will we have? We'll have 1.8 minutes per mark. 1.8 minutes per mark. So let's go to the exam, to the question paper again. So what does that really mean? It means therefore that, then let me bring up my calculator. Then it means therefore that this is 40 mark for question 1. So how much time should you spend? 1.8 minutes times 40 mark. You should not spend more than 72 minutes. 72 minutes is the same as 1 hour, 12 minutes. So even that can be broken down. Oh, no, this is for session B rather. Yes, you should not spend more than 1 hour, 12 minutes in session B. But let me go to session A. Session A is 30 mark, right? So we'll come back here and say 1.8 times 30. That gives us 54 minutes, which means you are not to spend more than 54 minutes in this session A, in this session 1, session A. Even at that, it's broken down to A, B, C. The A part is 13 minutes, the B part is 4 minutes, the C part is 13 minutes. You go further and break that down by saying 13 minutes times 1.8, which means you have 23.4 minutes. In the exam, I would have used only 23 minutes for the A part. And then I will store the 4 minutes, the 0.4, as an extra time, extra distance that we use to go through my answer script when I'm done. Then the B part here is 4 minutes. So you go do the calculation again, 1.4 times 4. That means you should not spend more than 7.2 minutes in this B part. But if I were you, I would not spend more than 7 minutes. I will store the 0.2 minutes. And the same thing for the other one that we did here, which is the 13 mark. 13 mark, like I said earlier, is 1.8 times 13, which is 23.4 minutes. So you must use your pencil to allocate the time. You can use that your 15 minutes to do all of this. Allocate your time, pick the question you want to read, and then go on and so on. The other part that I want to bring up here is that in the exam hall, make sure that you don't leave. You see where
Hmm?
yeah, you're saying something, Abdugani.
No,
Okay.
no, sir, no,
So
sir.
you see the way I've looked at my
Go on, sir.
script
Go
here.
ahead.
I've gone to four. I'm doing 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4D, 4D continue. And then here there's a space between 4 and question 2, right? If you have that in your exam, always write this. Please continue next page so that the examiner or the marker will not assume that that is the end of your script. So do not leave a blank space in between your answer. Please always write continue next page. Remember that your examiner, the marker needs, they are running for time. They want to look and mark as many scripts as possible because they are paper scripts, right? That is what we must take note. Then, lastly, make sure that your handwriting is legible. If it's not legible, the marker will make up what he can't understand. He can't make up the answer for you. So if you go to the doctor's office, the way they write their prescription, you won't understand it. I don't know whether you are trained for that, but don't go to the exam hall writing your exam the way the doctors write their prescription. It's very, very dangerous. All right. So that's what I would like to say regarding that. So make sure you write your exam, you write in a very legible way. Okay, so I've spoken about mark. I've also spoken about allocating your time. I've also spoken about starting with the easiest one. And lastly, like Abigani said earlier, you need only 50 marks to pass. But make sure you attempt all. Don't just spend more time in question one or the one you know very well. No, the longer the time you spend, then the concept of diminishing return will start setting in. So for a question that you should spend 1 hour, like the question one, I think it's 72 minutes. If after 72 minutes you are still on that question, whatever you are doing there, you are spending more time for lesser mark that you can get. So it is advisable you leave it wherever you stop, leave it and go and attempt others. And like he break it down earlier, he said in session B, if you out of the 40 mark, if you can score 20 there, you go to session C and score 15 mark there, then you go to that means 45. Then you go to session A and get another 15 mark. That would have been 60 mark. Remember, you don't, unless you want to be a prize winner, even at that, don't risk wasting more time beyond the time you have allocated on that particular question. All right. So if you have found value in what we have done, leave a comment in this comment section and tell us that. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Then Abgani, you please share your screen while I speak on the last points there. All right. So if you have found value on what we have done, please leave a comment there. Yeah, Femi is joining us from Ikeja, Asaka. Thank you very much. All right. So if you are just joining us, I want you to please leave your name and where you are joining us from on the comment section so I can acknowledge your presence. Now, the last part is what material should you use in the exam? Well, what will I recommend? I will recommend that you should use videos. You should use video lecture. Next slide, please, because I've already spoken about this. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So you should use video lecture. Now, okay, thank you, Samuel. Samuel says find great value in what we have done. Is it only Samuel that find value in what we have done? Please leave your comment there. Now, why should you use video lecture? About 12 years ago, when we started the ICAN classes, right, we used to run physical classes. So, but you see, the financial market crashed around 2000 and I think 2009, yes, 2009, 2010, the financial market crashed. And therefore, students that should come for classes couldn't come for classes because of workload. And when financial market crashed, what will happen? Banks and financial institutions start retrenching staff. So the student were, that is our student, they now require more time to do more people's job in the office. So a lot of them couldn't come for classes. That's when we launched the video lecture. But our observation over time is that those who use the video, do more, they perform better than those who go for classes. And then we found out why was that? Because it's the same lecturer that lecture in the classes that also handles the video lectures. Then what we found out was very interesting. We found out that although for the physical classes, when you go for physical classes, if you miss it because of work pressure or because you travel or because you fell sick, whatever the reason, the lecturer is not going to repeat the class for anybody. Usually they don't. But for the video lecture, you don't have to miss any class. So we found out that whether you are traveling, whether you are in the hotel, whatever you are doing, you are there with your lecturers. And that's how we found out that those who get the video lecture, they perform better. So not because physical class is not good, but because of the other complications that go around it. The same thing. So we decided that what we then did was to close down our physical class. So we don't run physical classes again. And remember, we're the pioneer in this industry when we launched this. So that's when we started releasing their video and start fine-tuning it. And by the last statistics, we have the highest success rate per tuition center in Nigeria. For those who got our video lecture, go through it the way we have asked them to go through it and go through the exam. So why should you use video? You should use video because somebody is teaching you, somebody is talking to you. It requires less effort when you observe, when you are watching the video than when you are studying on your own, right? Then our recommendation is go through the video lecture at least 2 times before the exam, twice. Why twice? The reason is very simple. The reason is because when you go through a music or a movie or a message more than once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, after a while, when you are still going through it, you can predict, you can say what the lecturer or what the preacher or what the musician want to say next. You can say the lyrics. Okay, I think, let me share my own screen here. I think I've left. Okay, all right. Okay, let me share my own screen. All right, so like what I was saying earlier on, just one moment. So yeah, my thoughts didn't leave me though. So when you go through those music, you can always recall, and even when you are not making conscious effort to remember the music, when you are on your own on solitary moment, you discover that the music or the message will start coming back to your mind. So that is what videos does. So if you go through the video lecture at least 2 times before the exam, then you should pass your exam. So what does it then say when you get the video lecture? We have the video lecture where we have covered more than 95% of the syllabus, and we do our best to update them every diet, right? Then you will get more than 12 diet past questions that were fully solved in that video lecture. That's not all. You will also get the solution to the ICAN pack. If you are using the ICAN pack, you will realize that it's very voluminous. So we encourage you to have it as a backup rather than use it primarily, right? So if you have gone through the video lecture at least 2 times before the exam and you still have time, then you can now add ICAN pack, you can now add other textbook that you have. We're not saying you shouldn't use other textbook. No, we're saying use them after you have gone through the video lecture at least twice. So when you do that, then you should be able to pass the exam. All right. That's not all. We also give you access to our member area. Our member area have more than 1,000 questions and solutions that we have put there. It's an archive where you see so many questions there, and you can't finish going through all of this and still fail the exam. All right. Then lastly, our Telegram class. Our Telegram classes are free and available to everyone. So if you want to get any of what I've just told you, the number on the screen is what you should call. Call, WhatsApp, or text. You can write it down before I stop sharing my screen now. You can write down that number, those numbers. If you call and nobody is picking it probably means you are closed for the day. We'll definitely return your call. If you send WhatsApp message and nobody is responding, we'll definitely respond. It means we are closed for the day. If you send a text message and we're not responding, we'll definitely respond during work hour. All right. So if you have any question, you want to leave it in the comment section. then I'll be glad to answer them. I think Abduganu is back. Um, yeah, I think he too will be glad to answer them. So, but if you don't have any, okay, Mustafa said this would be very helpful many times. Thank you, Mustafa. So if you have comment for us, please drop it there. If you like what we have done, give us an emotion, give us a feedback in the comment section while we bring this to a close. So Abiganu, do you have any final word for our students? Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Um, I would like to mention that just like the quotes we have here, that don't expect the results without the work. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary, according to Vida Sassoon. So you have to what? You have to uh, do the work first, then you expect the results. So you can't, except you expect the manna to fall from heaven, okay, or you want to use juju into the exam hall. Okay, so you need to what? You need to start the preparation now. Yes, it is not late until it is late. Okay, so you still have more time to prepare for this diet. So with our video lectures, okay, what you need to do is to what? Is to prepare your timetable and work with the timetable. Believe me, we have a success story. We have students that has do this and it's work for them. So yours, by the special grace of God, will not be an exemption to it. So kindly join our Telegram classes. You can always request for the previous class notes. When you scroll up, you can always go back to our weekly class notes, and you find other students are also in the group. Okay, you have access to questions and answers asked and then responded to by the lecturer, asked by the student and responded to by the lecturer. Wishing you best of luck in your coming exam. Do have a successful diet. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Abduganu. What are your emotions? I want to read your comments. If you are still there, um, okay, there's no new comment. Thank you, everyone, and have a great and blessed day. Bye.
Bye.